Today is the last day of 2024, so let's go over my top, what is it, 12? No, let's just do regular top 10 games of 2024. Although, like everybody, I did have a backlog of games this year because I just saw a thing that said 19,000 games released this year, which is absurd. Probably 90% of which are terrible. But we can't always get to everything in a year, so here's some stuff that I didn't get to that probably could have made my list had I got to it. So I didn't get to Retro Realms, Ash vs. Evil Dead, and Halloween Double Pack. That probably would have made the list had I got to play it this year. The Thing Remastered, Animal Well, that would have made the list. Iron Meat, The Plucky Squire, Contra, Operation Galuga, Conscript, Nobody Wants to Die, Wrath Eon of Ruin, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Penny's Big Breakaway, Harold Halibut, Phantom Fury, and Stalker 2. So quite a few games I wanted to play, but didn't quite get to make this list. But I did play enough to make a top 10 list. So let's go over the first two honorable mentions. The first one, I was debating whether or not to put this on here because it's not a new game. It's a 30 almost no over 30-year-old game now, and that is the Night Dive. Night Dive makes my list. I think three times. They're gonna always make the list. I think. The Night Dive re-release of Doom and Doom 2, the 2-pack, they re-released on I think it was during QuakeCon. Yeah. What more do you want? It's just Doom and Doom 2 again. Although they allow mods now. All the mods that are on PC are now available on console, which is cool. But the biggest draw for this release is Legacy of Rust, the new expansion. The first official Doom expansion since, 2012? Since, now I think, No Rest for the Living? Yeah, so it's been a long time. And this is one made by, I think, Machine Games. So Machine Games makes my list twice this year. We'll get to that later. So, yeah, not much else to say other than it's Doom and Doom 2, perfected by Night Dive. And then my second honorable mention. This is less of an honorable mention and more so a game I played this year because it was kind of disappointing, but it was still fun for a while, and that is Squirrel with a Gun. I think I was expecting more of a polished experience. Not to say it's a bad game, but I still had a lot. It's making my list. It's still a lot of fun. But what else is there to say besides it's a squirrel and you pick up guns and you collect acorns? That's basically all that you do. But some of the game design is a little wonky. Like I couldn't beat the boss because it was so janky. I think I don't know if it's the first boss with the tank. It's janky as hell. So I'm like, this is just frustrating me. I think I tried it like 20 times. So I'm just like, screw this. But I still had a fun time with it. So let's get down to my actual top 10. Number 10 is Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. I played about 3/4 of Hellblade 1 years ago on Game Pass, but I watched the rest of it, so I was prepared for this. And I know some of the complaints about this game are that it's not enough gameplay and it's mostly an interactive movie. Those complaints are not unfounded. There is obviously gameplay, but almost not enough. Like I understand the claim that it's a tech demo. It does at times feel like a 5-hour tech demo. That's another thing. This game was teased like 5 years ago, and it took this long to come out, and it's only like 5 hours long. The best things I can say about this game are, one, it's probably the best looking game I've ever seen. Unreal Engine 5 on it is just amazing. And also, it's probably the best sounding game I've ever heard. You have to wear headphones for this game. It does a thing where you're constantly hearing voices. She's schizophrenic, so you're hearing voices behind you, all over around you, and it's just like incredible. There's a reason it won Best Sound at the Game Awards. It's well deserved. And Melina Juergens deserved Best Actress. I'm glad she won because these two games are carried on her back. So, and it's kind of remarkable when you think about the fact that she wasn't an actress. She just worked at Ninja Theory, and they just had her do the role now twice. So, good story, Incredible visuals, incredible sound. Gameplay is serviceable. It's not too much to write home about, which normally for me gameplay is king when it comes to games. But I mean, there's a reason this made the bottom of the list. It's still number 10 though. Number 9 is a game called Hypercharge Unboxed, and I don't think this is a game that technically released this year. It came out on Xbox this year, so I'm cheating a bit. I think it came out on PC last year. So, but it's essentially a toy soldiers game. You play as action figures. You're running around bedrooms, bathrooms, toy stores. You're fighting off toy planes, toy aliens, like all kinds of just different toy enemies, and it's just fun. I mean, it's a shooter. It's a third-person shooter. There is online multiplayer, but I mean that's really all it is. There's like TDM. There's domination. The usual game modes for multiplayer. But you're like capturing bases and stuff, and you're fighting off. I mean, it's the gimmick. The whole gimmick there is that you're playing as toys, and that alone kind of carries this whole game. So, I mean, there's not much else to say other than it's fun as hell. Number 8 is Killing Time Resurrected, another Night Dive game. The second of, I think, 3 on this list? Yeah. I mean, I'll buy anything they make. I still haven't played the Thing remaster, like I said, but Killing Time Resurrected, I had never played the original. I don't know. I mean, you had to have had a 3DO to play it, or the PC port. Once again, Night Dive does a brilliant job. They combine the PC and the 3DO version, kind of like what they did with Power Slave, which I love. I think I played that game last year, but I don't know if I made a best of last year. That game was one of the most fun games I played in a long time. But they did a similar thing here where they took the best of the PC and the 3DO, slapped them together, improved the graphics, not too much because it's a remaster. They're not trying to remake the whole thing. Remastered the sprites because it's using actual, basically full motion video cutscenes, quote unquote. The gameplay is fun. It's essentially a Doom. I mean, it was coming out around the time when all the Doom clones happened. So it's such a wacky game. There's so many weird enemy types. I like how the entire map is connected from the get-go. You can explore every single area from the start. There's no locked off areas. Well, in terms of the outdoors, that's unlocked, but there's a ton of locked doors. I mean, it's a key hunt game. That's all that these were back in the day. But it's just another solid release from Night Dive, and just keep going, guys. I'm looking forward to the day that you remaster Hexen, Heretic, Outlaws, the 1997 one, not the new one, and Alien Trilogy is the one I want most from you guys. Number 7 is a game called Still Wakes the Deep. I'm usually not one for horror games, but this, or like, there are other games like Amnesia. I think this is the Chinese Room. That's the name of the developer. I think they're the ones that made Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs. And I didn't play that, but this is a first-person horror game, which, like I said, I normally don't play. But I thought this was great. It's not super long. I think it's like 6-7 hours. And there's no combat. You're running from horrifying creatures. And you're like throwing things to distract them. It's not a hard game. Like, it's pretty damn easy. I had it on like just standard difficulty. But it's a walking sim. But it's a damn good one. It looks incredible visually. The enemy design is really, really creepy. And it's just like, they do a good job of building the mystery. Like, you don't know what's happening until about halfway through. And and then by the end, it's kind of a poignant ending. There's still not really a conclusive ending, but it's that type of game where I think some of the best horror movies don't need, especially a happy ending, but don't need to explain much. I don't think you have to, if you over-explain it, it becomes less scary. So, I recommend it, especially if I think it's still on Game Pass. That's how I played it. Number 6 is Marvel Rivals, the game that took the world by storm this month. And, I mean, there's so many people playing it. I think at its peak it was, well, I think 10 million people have played it. It's got to be more than that by now, 10 million unique players. But it's Overwatch, but in my opinion, better version of Overwatch with Marvel characters. And the fact that it has 33 characters at launch is bonkers. You never see hero shooters with that many at launch. And there's been leaks. There's already, I think, at least 5 characters that are in the pipeline. So I think they should just keep bringing them on. I mean, tons of them are fun to play. There's so many. You're gonna find one to play. There's not any that are like, oh, this is awful. It's really a genius move on Marvel's part because you can do the Super Smash Brothers Ultimate thing where every game event you can be like a new character has been revealed and just reveal a new character. And I mean, the deep bench of Marvel characters just is it's massive. There's thousands of Marvel characters. Obviously, there's probably only a couple hundred really popular ones, but there's already several I would like to see that aren't in there now. Having destructible environments is kind of wild. You don't see that often, especially in multiplayer games. Only have a couple game modes, but I think that's okay. There's probably going to have more as time goes on. Definitely more maps, I think, would help. But it's just a blast. I think everybody should try it, because especially since it's free to play. Number 5 is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. I would. It's kind of crazy. I don't think I would have put a Call of Duty game on my best of the year list since I don't know, at least 6 or 7 years. But this one, you can tell that Treyarch had 4 years to develop it. It had the longest dev time of any Call of Duty, just showing that what kind of game we could get from Call of Duty if Activision let them take their time and didn't rush them. Hopefully things will change now that Xbox owns Activision. Maybe they'll abandon the yearly model. I wish they would. I wish they would support games for a couple years before moving on. But this has the best multiplayer in quite some time, probably since, God, I don't know. Maybe Black Ops 2? So over 10 years. Zombies is back to form. It feels like the good old day. I mean, not completely. Some of the mechanics that are brought over from Cold War, it'll never truly feel like old zombies because of the new mechanics. But they kind of fix some of the problems from Cold War. Their maps so far have all been atmospheric, creative. The Easter eggs have been good. So Zombies feels like it's on an upward trajectory right now. And that's another thing that's been bad for several years. Like, MWZ last year was bad. Vanguard Zombies was bad. Cold War was kind of the last pretty good Zombies. And then the last piece of the puzzle, the campaign, also good. And I think it's probably the best campaign since Modern Warfare 2019, maybe? Or Cold War. Although I did have my issues with it. I streamed it. You can watch those streams on here. But it doesn't include things from the past as much as I wanted. Like, I wanted more references to the first two Black Ops games. Some more of those story threads being pulled, but it kind of goes off the rails towards the end, and it becomes more like, ugh, I dare I even say it, Black Ops 3. So yeah, it kind of falls apart at the end, but overall, it was fun as hell. It almost felt like a James Bond game, to be honest, more than a Call of Duty game. But if you've been out of the loop on Call of Duty, I highly recommend you go back in with this game. Number 4 is Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster from, you guessed it, Night Dive Studios. I never played the original. I was, I think, an infant, maybe less than that when the first one came out. But I love Doom clones, and so I love Star Wars of old. This came out back when LucasArts was at the top of their game. They were making good Star Wars games. Back when LucasArts existed. And this was just a blast. I did get a little turned around in places. I had to Google where to go at sometimes because it was a little bit confusing, but that was expected from a game from 95. But as Doom clones go, this might be up there as one of the best. It's a key hunt, like usual, of games of this time. But you have enemy types from Star Wars. You play as a stormtrooper. You got more weapons than I expected. I think there was like 8 weapons in this game, most of which you don't see in the films. Kyle Katarn is a cool character, and honestly, it feels like, and I think this is actually true, it's one of the first Doom clones that tries to weave together a story instead of just having episode to episode to episode with no real overarching story. This has an actual plot that strings together the different levels. So really all I can say is if you like Night Dive, if you like Star Wars, if you like Doom clones, definitely pick this up. It's a lot of fun. Number 3 is a game called Pepper Grinder. Now, I didn't really know what to expect with this game. It's from Devolver Digital, and I think it's a one-person development team. And it was just a blast. It could have made number 2 had I not played a certain game that made number 2. But I didn't really know what to expect with this game, but it turns out it's kind of like, well, I haven't played Mr. Driller Drill Land, but I've heard from what I've heard of that game, it's like that mixed with Dig Dug if Dig Dug was on crack, and mixed with Echo the Dolphin, except much better than Echo the Dolphin. Because you're digging really fast into the ground, picking up treasure, kind of jumping like Echo does, using the drill as a tool to swing, and then using it to fight bosses. It's just so much fun. It's not a super long game, although I had some problems with the final boss. It's probably only about like 4 hours, but the length of a game doesn't bother me. There's plenty of games that are short that I put on my Game of the Year list all the time. So if you're looking for an indie game that kind of scratches the itch of Echo or Dig Dug or Mr. Driller Drill Land, definitely try this. It's so much fun. Now we come to the top two. Number 2 is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, the longest title of a game this year probably. I know, just to be honest and upfront, I know nothing about this universe. My only experience with it is from last year when I played Warhammer 40k Boltgun, which was an absolute blast, because it is essentially a Doom clone, but in a universe that, yeah, I'm not familiar with, but the guns are awesome, the lore is awesome, the enemies are awesome. But I remember when this was revealed several Game Awards ago, and people were hyped as hell for it. I never played the original, but this is essentially a rebooted version of the sequel that never got made. There was a sequel planned at one point, but it got canceled. And then it looks like Saber Interactive scooped up the rights, and they decided to make the sequel instead. And boy, were they the right people to choose to make it. It definitely harkens back to another time of video games. It feels like a lost Xbox 360 game. There's really no fat to this game, no frills. It's just like a 7-8 hour meaty campaign that just doesn't let up. It doesn't try to be more than it is. Like a lot of shooters nowadays add like pointless RPG elements, add an unnecessary open world or open world sections. If you want to be critical of this, you could just describe it as a corridor shooter, because you are going, it does feel very Gears of War like that, where, although I wouldn't stoop to the length, like I wouldn't go so far as saying it's a corridor shooter, but the maps, they're not all linear. They're definitely pretty open, but you are following objective markers a lot of the time, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, it feels like it could have come out around like 2012, which makes sense because the last game was 2011. The Space Marines just feel awesome to play as. You're just so hulking and heavy, and your footsteps are thudding all the time. But what I can describe this game as, it feels like a third-person Doom mixed with Gears of War, and it just doesn't get old killing Tyranids. Because you got a parry system, you got finishers, you just rip these things to shreds. And it just, you'd think you'd get sick of it, but you don't. So honestly, if you need that like Gears of War itch scratched, play this, because it feels like, and it's been a while since we had a Gears of War game. It's been like 5 years. And it's going to be a while until E-Day. So if you need a third-person shooter, definitely play this. It is so much fun. And you don't need to know about the universe of the lore or even play the first game to get an idea of what's happening. Although there's still elements of the universe I was confused by, little references they made to the lore that I was like, huh? So a lot of things I don't get. It almost makes me want to jump into that world. But the problem is, it's like hundreds and hundreds of novels. So I'm not sure if I can do that. And then that brings us to number 1. And just like last year my number 1 game of the year, which was RoboCop Rogue City, came right at the end. It was one of the last games I played last year. Happened again this year. Come out in the beginning of this month, even later than RoboCop. And that is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I cannot tell you how pleased I am with how good this game turned out. I've been an Indiana Jones fan for as long as I can remember, and like most people, was sorely disappointed with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and even more so with Dial of Destiny, because we haven't had any good indie content since, well, in terms of films, since 1989, so like 35 years. And then for games, not since Fate of Atlantis, since 92. Yeah, we've had other games since then, like Emperor's Tomb, and Infernal Machine, and Staff of Kings. All of which were good to meh, but I have just been waiting patiently for a good new AAA Indiana Jones game, and One of the first videos I made on this channel was when Bethesda announced they were making it a few years ago. And I just lost my mind at it. I'm like, are you serious? We're getting a new Indiana Jones game? Because 2009, I think, was the last one with Staff of Kings. So it's been over 10 years. It's been 15 years. And this game absolutely makes up for the last two movies, 100%. And I think the use of first person was the right call. I know I was a little bit apprehensive, and I know a lot of people hated it. They're like, are you kidding me? You're getting a first person Indiana Jones game? That's stupid. It should be third. Well, when you play it and you see how detailed the game is with like all the puzzles and stuff, it makes perfect sense that it's first person, and I think it works fine. And I like that it pulls out to third when you're climbing or swinging and stuff like that. The story of this game slots right into the time period between Raiders and Last Crusade. I think it's a year after Raiders. It doesn't conflict with any of those films, which is good. I won't spoil it, but finding out what the Great Circle is at the end was not spoiled at all in any of the the ads on that you saw out there. Any of the marketing didn't spoil it. I did not see it coming at all. So it was kind of a mind-blowing twist that they definitely pulled from a deep well of old indie expanded universe content. This comes directly from a children's book or a young adult novel from like 20 years ago. Honestly, this game could have been like a 10 out of 10, but it's damn close. It's probably a 9 out of 10 for me. The only thing holding it back is the somewhat wonky combat and stealth. If that's tweaked and fixed for the sequel, which we are definitely getting, because apparently this game is done well enough that there was recent news that Disney has picked up the phone and said, we want more Indiana Jones games. And just let Machine Games cook. Like Disney, I know you're going to be tempted to meddle in it, because anytime something is successful, you want to get your fingers in it. But just let them do their thing. Stay out of it. Just greenlight the game. Let Machine Games do it, because this game, you can tell these people love Indiana Jones. The love is just all over the screen and every nook and cranny of this game when you play it. Unlike something like Star Wars Outlaws, you can tell these people love this franchise. And also, in terms of Troy Baker, I was skeptical. I'm like, there's nobody else that can play Indiana Jones or voice him except Harrison Ford. And then you start playing and you're like, wow, this is a really good impression of Harrison Ford. And it's not just an impression. He does kind of make it his own. And now I am 100% fully sold on Troy Baker voicing him in as many future games as possible. And because we can't get Harrison anymore, because he's like 82, I would be on board for an animated series with Troy Baker voicing him. Bring that on, please. So this game is just fantastic. Definitely my game of the year. And maybe at some point I'll go into a super deep dive of this game, like a long review of it. But that's it. That's my top 10 games of the year. Honestly, it was kind of a light year. It felt like 2014 all over again, ironically. Like 10 years later, we had another light year. Last year was much busier for game releases. And then next year, starting tomorrow, looks to be stacked as hell. So, onward and upward, I suppose. Let me know in the comments if any of these games you've played, if they make your list. Let me know what your list is. And share, subscribe, like the video if you haven't. And I will see you next time. Peace out.